Good evening, everybody. Uh, I am delighted as the president of the Psychological Association to, to announce and actually start the launch of our Psychology Career Campus series. My name is Ronald Carolison, and I'm a professor at Stellenbosch University. This uh, this series is an initiative specifically aimed at supporting students and graduates in navigating the diverse academic and professional pathways um, within the broad field of psychology. And so we really offered um, this series to help students with the structured guidance at these transitional stages. It's a challenge that I often hear students talk about. What are we going to do next year? So this was originally conceptualized by Dr. Sadat, so I just want to thank her very much. And it's now been coordinated by Ms. Sarja Mia. There are two confirmed workshops. Of course, the one you see in front of you, Navigating Postgraduate Pathways, and then the second one on the 8th of May as Beyond the Traditional Routes, Exploring Alternative Careers in Psychology. What we would like you to do, and I missed putting on my video, um, is I'd like to introduce Dr. Pakiza Rajab and thank her at the same time for supporting the development and coordination of this. She will just go through the program for this evening and then I will continue. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Prof. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a jam-packed evening. So yes, there is a section where you can add your questions, but please don't take offense if we don't get to all of them, because as you can see, we are going to cover pretty much as many categories as we can. We have quite a few professors from various universities who will be speaking about the programs their universities offer. Thank you to Stellenbosch as well as University of Western Cape. And then we also have professionals who have passed their masters or who have passed their registered counselling or psychometry courses who will be giving us an introduction to basically all of our registration categories this evening. So because we are going to try to finish by 8 o'clock, each speaker will have 15 minutes to present on their category. If there is time, we will allow for one or two questions if possible. Otherwise, please feel free to reach out to SAISA at the end of the evening, and we will try to get your questions through to everyone by the end of the week. Right, so we're going to kick straight off, and we're going back to Prof. Ronald, and she's going to talk to us about the master's programs at the University of Stellenbosch.
Good evening, everybody. Can you see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, Prof.
We can see
Yes,
you,
we can.
Prof.
We only can see you, Prof. No, we can't see your screen.
Okay. Can you see it now?
There we go.
Excellent.
Yes,
Okay.
there we go. Thank you.
Okay, right. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the two master's programs that we have at Stellenbosch University. Let me just open it up. Right. We have...
Yeah, we lost you again.
You lost me.
Yes, we can't see your slides.
Okay.
I think we could, Pakisa. Everything was fine. Maybe it was on your side.
Okay, sorry.
Can you see it?
Yeah, everything's fine, Prof. You can proceed.
Okay. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk specifically about two master's programs that we offer in our department. It is the master's in in psychology. It's a research master's, 100% research master's degree. And then the master's in clinical psychology, which consists of coursework, clinical work, and a research assignment. I will say a little bit about each of these programs, but I just want to tell you very briefly about some of the other postgraduate programs that we have in our department. It's an MPhil in public mental health and a postgraduate diploma in public mental health, and of course, our PhD in psychology program. So these programs are specifically designed, the MPhil and the postgrad, for practitioners, people who are already working in mental health spaces, and it's also an interdisciplinary space. So nurses, psychologists, occupational therapists are all welcome to apply, and I'd really encourage you to look at some of these programs too. But I'm going to talk specifically about the MA Psychology Research and the Master's Clinical Psychology programs. So this program, you have to be registered for a minimum of 2 years. You must have 65% for honors or equivalent, and the applications must be accompanied by a very brief preliminary research topic with clear objectives and a research question. So it's very brief, less than half a page, but I think it requires a bit of thinking and perhaps discussion with a supervisor, potential supervisor. So you are required to secure a supervisor for your research by making contact with staff members in the department based on their research interests. And in order to apply, you must have a letter of commitment from the supervisor. And the closing date is the 31st of October of the preceding year. So for next year, these applications close on the 31st of October 2025. So the MA Clinical Psychology program is an incredibly popular program at our university. The requirements is that you must have at least 65%. You must have 2 official languages, 2 essays as part of the application, and then some community psychological work experience. So I think what is very important to note is that these applications close very early. That's on the 30th of May, because we have an extensive selection process. So that's about, we annually get about 400 to 500 applicants, sometimes more. We shortlist about 34 applicants from that 400 to 500, and then we select 8 students. So we conduct the interviews with those 34 people at the end of July. And so if you are a successful candidate, you will know by mid to the end of August. So it's quite a long process from the department, from the perspective of the applying student, but also from the perspective of the staff. So what does this program involve? Once you're into this Master's in Clinical Psychology, it involves the successful completion of examinations and practical work in the first year. So you will do theory and practical work. You will start seeing clients during your first year. In the second year, you will do an internship of 12 months accredited by the professional board. That is in the second year. And you are usually paid for that internship. And it usually takes place at a hospital. And then after you've completed year 2, you do 12 months of community service. That is year 3. And you must also, by the end of year 2, complete your research assignment. And you have to do that before you can go on to community service. So the successful completion, you also, after you've completed year 3, you have to complete the professional board examination for psychologists. That happens in February, June, and October. So it's 3 years, it's 3 intense years that this training involves. And then I thought, now, what advice can I give to you from serving on these selection panels and, working with students for many years, thinking about whether they should apply? The first thing is apply to as many universities as you can. The competition is really, really tough because most people accept only 8 and some to 10 people. The other thing is the second piece of advice, do not complete your application the night before it's due. It will show, especially because there are often essays that you need to do that requires some thought, and you have to give it some time. And the third one is have a plan B. This is what I tell my students. Have a plan B. What options are available to you if you do not get into the clinical master's program? You must think of options that it would be really great if you could get into the program, but what happens if you don't? And so that is really the core issues that I think that really, that is challenging for students. And then the last thing I'd like you to do, and really to encourage you to do, that is our department website. It is very clear. There's information under programs about all the programs that we offer, including the ones I've spoken about. The names of the coordinators of those programs are also on the website. So you can do yourself a favor if you want to learn more about our department. Everything is there. You can also see what the research interests of colleagues are. So with that, I'd like to just say thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm very open to, I'll stop sharing now. I can take a few questions.
We can take one quickly from Nadine.
Thank you for the
Nadine.
presentation, Prof. Can you hear me?
Yes, is that Nadine?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, for the 2 languages, do you accept English and Afrikaans? Because I do believe UCT does not accept Afrikaans as an additional language.
Yes, we do. Precisely
Thank you.
because many of the clients that you will see at the clinic from the broader community are Afrikaans speaking. So we do accept English and Afrikaans.
That's wonderful to hear. And then I'd just like to know, what are some examples of the community volunteer work that you guys would ideally look for?
Look, I can tell you, there's no specific, ideal, example, but I can tell you what many of the people who apply have done. Many people have done the courses at Lifeline, have actually done counseling at Lifeline on a volunteer basis. Some of them work at the local Community Keepers, which is a large NGO in the Stellenbosch area. Some of them have done counseling at rape crisis, and so forth and so forth. So those are the kinds of things that people do. Obviously people are coming from other parts of the country. They work in organizations with some form of psychoeducation or psychological counseling is done. So yeah, Elsa, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Prof.
Okay, there's another hand up. I can't see.
Also.
Please just go ahead and speak.
Thank you very much, Prof. My question is, your advice to applicants that are currently in their honors year, because it seems quite a bit like it's not expected for someone to be applying right out of their honors year. For example, the requirement where you must have your interim academic results at a time quite early in the year where most people don't. I mean, I personally won't have my results until the end of June. So I was just wondering your advice to someone who's currently in their honors year and preparing to apply.
We also get people to do a research exercise and a writing exercise, so we have a good idea as to whether people will have the capacity to cope with the demands, the academic and the emotional demands of the program. We select people every year. Sometimes I think there's a distinction between straight from honors year. Sometimes people have extensive experience and then come and do honors. We have an example in one of the previous year of someone that worked as a chef for a number of years and then came back at the age of 30 something to do an honors, and he got selected into the master's program. He had lots of life experience, a lot of psychological life experience in addition to being a chef. So when people are 21 and they're doing an honors, it is most unlikely that we will select them. So there is a nuance to that question. If you're 21, it is, and you've never worked outside the university setting, it is less likely. I'm not saying impossible. We actually have someone in our program that did an honors and a research master's and then got selected into the program. But it's very unlikely if you're very young, that you're 21 or 22, that you'll get accepted into the program.
Thank you so much, Prof. I see we still have hands up, but I'm a little worried about time. I'm also seeing some of the questions come through. So Will and Sumay, if you could maybe put your questions in the chat. If there is time towards the end, we'll definitely come back to it. I also think as we get more presenters to speak, maybe your questions will get answered as well. So yes, let's try it that way. I just don't want us sitting here at 10 p.m. Thanks so much, Prof. Okay, so our next presenter or speaker is Dr. Guru Kisnasamy. We're going to do something a little bit different here. He's submitted a few questions, which I'll be asking. And I think, yes, like you have been doing in the chat, keep those questions going. We'll try to fit in as many as we can in the 15 minutes. So I think, yes, let's get going with Dr. Kisnasamy. Just let's check that you can unmute yourself, Doctor.
Thank you. Yes.
Amazing. So you're an educational psychologist, and yes, tell us how you started in ed psych, why educational psych?
Thank you, Dr. Pakisa Rajab. I also want to thank Professor Carolson for hosting this program, and all the other presenters and our guests who are in the audience this evening. Thank you for allowing me to share my personal journey and experience, and I hope that it would serve as a motivation for students struggling to get into psychology as well, because mine was also a struggle journey, but finally I managed to achieve it. So my interest in educational psych started when I was a teacher of children with special education needs. And we always wondered, there's a need to understand why certain factors affect, for example, the academic performance of the children and behavior of the children. So my interest continued, and I then did a diploma in special education and even got more curious, having then did a BA with psych majors, and then finally a BEd degree. All this was done on a part-time. You will recall that in the 80s, it was quite difficult for students to become full-time, and there were tribal or ethnic universities, so you had to travel great distances to go to one that suited your racial group. But finally, a big break came in, Pakiza, when there was a Harvard South Africa fellowship program that was advertised in South Africa. And I applied for it while teaching. This program allowed you to go and study overseas, and I was selected to go to Harvard University in the USA. So having got the degree, we had to then submit it to HPCSA. And I need to just advise our students in the audience as well that an overseas qualification must always be accredited in South Africa by the Health Professions Council of South Africa. I was fortunate that finally I got my license to practice educational under the registration of educational psychology, and then went into private practice. I think it's just to motivate students that you need to persevere and you need to keep the passion going to achieve what you want.
Thanks so much, Doctor. I think already I can imagine some people have questions about your different path. It wasn't psychology from the get-go. You started with teaching for individuals who might want to take a gap year from honors and maybe go into education. Please come back to psychology though. But in your story, Doctor, can you tell us what you believe are some of the skills or the qualities that you think help you persevere in this industry?
Okay, the qualities or skills are required is much of it is intrinsic. It's whether you possess a curiosity for psychology, whether you possess an interest in human behavior. And often when I sit in a restaurant, my children or my wife told me, focus on the food, don't focus on the people. And just curiosity will lead you into observing people and the behavior and why they behave in a certain way. It was very interesting to watch Parliament debate the other day and look at the personalities, the behavior changes, and so on of people, and you begin to understand why they do what they do. So it is quite an interesting thing to look at. So one of the skills that you need to require as a psychologist is the ability to listen very attentively to your client. And good listening skills is a requisite. But I'd like to just quote from the American Psychological Association, which lists the following skills for their prospective students that might be required. One of them is the cognitive skills, which covers having analytical and critical thinking, creativity, managing information well, having judgment, and decision-making. And then, of course, communication skills will be your ability to communicate orally with your client, also probably do presentations at different levels, and your written skills as well. Personal skills, of course, requires adaptability, integrity, and self-regulation. Basically, it requires you to be able to adapt to the situation very quickly. And the social skills involves collaboration, inclusivity, being able to understand the ethnic or cultural differences of your client and accommodating for that. And having leadership skills. Of course, the last one is technological skills, which requires a sound knowledge of the computer systems and the various programs that you do. Just an example of listening skills, Pakiza, is I had a client once who came in, and I was all attentive in the early days, and she told me a story. And towards a conclusion, I'm looking at what techniques now do I use to help this person. And she said to me, "Doctor, thank you very much for listening to me. I feel so much better." And she left. Basically, the story is that we need to be an attentive, listener, if you have that ability and focus on the client, don't touch your phone, don't touch your pen, don't look at the door, don't look at the clock, then that is a skill that will take you into the psychological field.
Amazing. One last question from my side, and then I would like to open up the floor for maybe a question or two. Can you maybe take us through a normal day as you? What's the normal type of cases or referrals or the type of work you do on a normal day?
Okay. Pakisa, I live in an area called Chatsworth in the south of Durban. And as you know, the ratio of psychologists to the community is very limited. And in South Africa, it's said to be about 2.5 for 100,000 people. And the norm is around 23. As a result of which you have the community who come to you for various issues, various problems like, family issues, addiction issues, drugs in schools, gender-based violence, all kinds of issues that affect the family and the community. And you try the best you can to be able to assist them in this regard. It's not often, and you seek help, of course. They might come for a problem that might be psychiatric or medical in condition, and you refer accordingly. But in a community that we live, because we live in the community, we understand some of the issues that are faced, and we also get involved in community work, which is, of course, gratis and which is expected of a psychologist as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Kisnasamy. I mean, I have so many more questions that I could ask you, but knowing time is limited, maybe we can open up the floor to a question or two. So please, guys, feel free to put up your hand if you have a question. Just in the chat, I think there's a lot of people who are interested in going the EdPsych route, and they were asking, do they need to first do a teaching diploma? No, you don't have to. There's some success stories in the chat as well. We have some Kelo asking, they'd love to know which approaches are frequently used by educational psychologists and which clients they frequently see.
Yes, basically we're very eclectic in our approach, and we look, it depends on what the client presents and who the client is, the personality of the client and so on, and you accommodate them depending on the issues being presented. So you have to be versatile, you have to be able to draw from various approaches and use the one that might be appropriate.
Thank you. Then we have Serene, whose hand is up. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you so much. First of all, I just wanted to say to Dr. Guru that it's an honor to listen to you. I'm also from Durban, and you've reminded me a lot of my late grandfather this evening, which is very special. I am a teacher myself. I've been teaching for nearly 7 years. I've got my B.Ed. I completed my BA in English and Psychology last year, and I was accepted to do my honours this year, which is wonderful. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a psychologist. I was actually psychologist before teacher, and then I ended up going the teaching route anyways. But I'm grateful for it because I feel that when it gets to the point of wanting to apply for masters, if I am unsuccessful, I have my teaching to fall back on. And when I was initially wanting to get into psych, I wanted to work with children. However, now I'd prefer to go the clinical route instead, just to give me, a little bit more option, broaden my options a little bit. So I just wanted to know, I don't know if this is a relevant question, but if being a teacher and having my background in teaching, if wanting to apply for clinical rather than educational, if that would be like a hindrance in any kind of way, that it would be like a case of me being steered towards educational rather than clinical with my background. I don't know if that's a relevant question. I'm so sorry. I'm experiencing all kind of anxiety here, but I just have to ask.
Thank you, Serena. And I'm glad that you identify as well with teaching and in my area of Durban as well. I think the approach, you're welcome to branch out into any field that you feel passionate about. And I'm assuming that you're much younger than me, and therefore you have many years in your life in which you can venture into clinical, educational, and look at where you feel most comfortable. I had a colleague who's a psychologist, and he's also graduated as a lawyer. So he had a kind of a multidisciplinary approach and background. So the more opportunities you have, go for it and look at what is your passion, and then you could settle with what you're comfortable with.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your insight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kisnasamy. I'm not seeing any more hands up, but it is time for the next speaker. So thank you so much. Keep the questions coming in the chat and we'll try to get to them. But now for our next speaker, Dr. Lee Adams-Tucker from the University of Western Cape.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Let's see if I can share my screen. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right, coming up. Okay. So just to introduce myself, my name is Lee Tucker, and I am the postgraduate deputy HOD at UWC. But I've also coordinated the honours program for quite a few years, and I see some familiar names in the chat and participant list. So I get a sense of the anxiety, the concerns, what happens during honours, post-honours. So today I'm going to be speaking about the programs that are on offer at UWC for our master's level. I'm going to start talking about firstly our two applied master's programs. The first is our Master's in Clinical Psychology, which has been really nicely explained by Prof in terms of the breakdown of what that degree looks like, but it leads to registration with the HPCSA as a clinical psychologist. Our program is a full-time contact program. It's not online. It involves quite a lot of sacrifice. It's 8:30 to 4:30 most days of the week. In the program, students are exposed to clinical and research supervision. The modules that you see on the side there, that's some of the content that's covered. Modules that you're familiar with in your honours year, with psychopathology, interventions, assessment. But then we have a lot of other areas that we go into in terms of health psychology, community and contextual, and some of the more skills-based modules. We also have a really wonderful opportunity for work integrated learning because you start seeing clients during your M1 year. And we have partnerships with local NPOs, which is where we source some of our client cases, like Goldilocks and the Bear Foundation for a lot of our child cases that we're working with, as well as exposure at the local hospitals in the Western Cape. Okay, so our students do have a lot of exposure in that regard. There we go. So Masters in Research Psychology, just to speak to that, we are one of the few programs in South Africa that is a Masters in Research Psychology, which means it leads to registration with the HPCSA. The benefit of that is our students are really quite competitive once they leave their Masters. A lot of them do internships and find placements at the SAMRC, the HSRC, as well as in research institutes within higher education institutions. So it's a really wonderful platform and a nice competitive edge that we have in terms of having this offering. It's a full-time contact program, very similar to our MPsych. There's mentoring and research supervision. A lot of opportunity for work integrated learning where our students are involved in projects in the faculty, going out in different communities based around Bellville where we are, our university is. And so there's a lot of rich integration of experiential learning with the academic content. There's also work study opportunities where some of our MRes students will be tutors in the department or take up roles there. So the structure of those programs, it's already been explained, but your first year is your academic year, your training year in the institution. You start on your mini dissertation. Ideally, the more you do in that year, the better, but it can carry through to your internship. Then you have an internship year, so the same applies MPsych and MRes. And I can give some examples of where those students go. Then it is your board exam that you need to complete. So remember, MRes, because it's registered with HPCSA, that they have to do a board exam. And then with our clinical students, obviously the additional year for your community service. The internship placements for our clinical students, just to mention that that's normally Department of Health, and also with department, our defense. So in the military, our students also do placements there. The other offering that we have is our Masters in Psychology by Thesis. So this is our research-only oriented type of program. It's a full thesis, it's a full-time independent study, and applicants can study remotely. We do have people from the Western Cape, but we also have a number of students from different provinces. Ideally, the arrangement would be that students would identify a supervisor on our website or from working with them previously. And we do have a list of staff research areas, and that they would connect with that supervisor in building their identity for where they want to go in their psychology career. The opportunities, individuals who are part of our thesis program are often graduate learning assistants within the department, which is a bridge between the tutors and the academic staff. And it's a wonderful opportunity to learn skills within higher education and to bolster your CV if you're interested in moving in that space. And it also allows you to apply for various funding schemes like the NRF, because you may note that NRF funding doesn't apply to your professional training programs. So this being an academic stream, you do have that option available. Okay, so all three of our programs, you need an undergrad with a major in psychology, and your honors final average should be a minimum of 65%. For our two applied programs, you'll see the opening and closing dates. As Prof mentioned earlier, MPsych closes much earlier because we have quite a large volume of applicants and because of the date when our selections takes place. So those applications close at the end of May. MRes stays open until the end of August. To apply, there's an institutional application, so students have to apply on the UWC website. But the most important thing that you also need to do is the departmental application. So for both MPsych and MRes, there is a JOT form, which has all the information about what documents are required, what the autobiographical essays are, what evidence needs to be supplied. And there's also separate links for the referee reports. And this is very important. We'll speak about referees in a while. After we've collated the information, the applications have closed, then we move through to what we call paper selections. For the MPsych program, the clinical collective, so that is your staff cohort who train on the clinical collective, they will work through all the paper applications. And I think it's very important to note that it's not a single decision, that it's really a collective effort, that we review in small panels and big panels each applicant. Last year, we had close on 500 applications for our MPsych program. Similarly, for MRes, it's the same process that collective is involved in reviewing all the applications that come through. I think last year they had roughly between 80 and 100 applications for that program. The shortlisting, you can see there that we typically invite 40 to 50, depending on the pool of candidates. That's for MPsych. And then for MRes, 20 to 30. Then the selections happen, and our totals are quite similar to other institutions. We select between 6 or 8 for the clinical program and approximately 8 to 10 for our MRes. For the Masters by Thesis, the opening date, we open it right at the start of the year, and we close applications mid-July The reason being that if students register in the second half of the year, they're still paying for a full year of registration, which doesn't seem very fair. So we like students to register in the first half of the year. But from August through to December, we still process applications. We support students who might be interested. So if you are in honors now and you're thinking about doing a master's by thesis, in the second half of your year, you can start planning to reach out to someone who might be a supervisor to get the documents together so that you're ready when your marks are available at the end of the year to apply the following year. The process for that is similar. It's an institutional application. There's a departmental application, which includes some information as well as a brief concept note. Then we have a departmental review. So we'll look and see at the nature of the application, the development of the concept note. Will provide feedback, and we may ask the candidate to resubmit. This is just a snapshot of what you might see on our website. So this is on the UWC website. You go through to the Faculty of Community and Health Sciences, through to psychology, through to postgraduate, and you'll get to a screen like this where there are each of the different programs. So clinical, research, thesis. And if you click on the little cross on the side, it'll open it up and you'll get the full information there. But you'll have these links, so you'll be able to access it through the hyperlink that's on the screen there. All right, just with time. So application preparation, this has been spoken about a little bit, but the main points: start the process early. It does take a while to compile all the documents, work through the essays. And if you are struggling to start your application, I would say at that point, maybe you need to reflect. Is this self-doubt? Is it a question of readiness? Is it about procrastination? Because all of those things are relevant. So what is your barrier to getting the process started? And spend some time thinking about that. Get feedback on your essays, family members, friends, just a second pair of eyes, proofread over your work. Reflect on the use of AI for submissions. Okay, AI, we talk about it a lot in higher education. You might use it to a certain degree, but what is the use of your AI in terms of ethics, in terms of authenticity? I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just asking you to think about it. Beware of cutting and pasting across applications. It's good to apply at different institutions, but just take care with that. I don't think a university likes to see, if you're applying to UWC, all the essays talk about University of Johannesburg or other sites. So just take care with that. And identify suitable referees. Start now. Reach out to your referees, see if they're available, if they have capacity, and send reminders. If you are applying to lots of different institutes, it's very difficult to track as a referee when a report needs to go in, what the deadline is. Be respectful in your communication, but reminders are actually very helpful. And then lastly, interview preparation. And I've just got a picture there of my colleagues. Each selection process is different. Each institution is different, and even within an institution, it will vary per year to year because we need some diversity in our process. There is no perfect psychology candidate. There's no perfect way to prepare. But saying that, I think preparation has its place. Just as you would prepare for a job interview, you'd prepare how you dressed, you'd manage your anxiety, you'd learn a bit about the organization. There are things that you can do. But preparation means different things for different people. And sometimes it's more important to sit with that for yourself rather than looking at a script or a list of what needs to be done. If you are selected, if you make it through to the interviews, review your application essays, remind yourself of what you wrote, and also reflect on previous selection processes, whether you made it through paper selections, and you got to an interview, or if you didn't. Spend some time thinking about what that means in your journey. And lastly, that's just my information there. You can also like and follow our department on the socials. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so you can find updates there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. We're going to try to squeeze in one question, and you're getting quite a few rounds of applause. Inga, if you could maybe ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Tucker. It's nice to see you. I have a question regarding the Masters in Research Psychology. Obviously, I said in class that my passion is educational psych, and that's kind of what I came into psychology for. But once I saw the Masters in Research, I was curious, and I was seeing it as maybe another possible option for my future. But now I have, I think, 3 questions. One, if one should apply for educational and also for research, does that kind of count against you if the panel figures out, oh, you are sort of split between pathways? Do they want to see more certainty that you want to do a certain path in psychology, or is it okay to apply to multiple streams?
Yeah, Ingrid, it's nice to see you. It's not an easy question. I think from the perspective of a committee member or one of the individuals on the panel, we would always flag if there's a sense that this person has a background in this, or they're talking a lot about education. That might be a question that comes up. We often see, for example, that and the other way around, like if I think of my colleagues in M research, sometimes for them it's really difficult that they get candidates and it feels like it's been a fallback into MRes, and that's ideally not what they want. They want people that are committed to the field. I think you need to be true to where you're at in terms of negotiating that. So that would be where you need to spend a little bit of time. So I would say it's fine to have a bit of reservation going in, because to me that's authentic, but you can also speak to that in where you're at. And I'm sure a committee would want to see a little bit more certainty of how you've gone through your decision-making process, whichever way you decide to go.
Okay, so yeah, then the last thing that I just want to add to that is because if you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, I know they said we shouldn't have too many big dreams, but let's say you are someone who kind of believes you want to make changes in a system, or that is your aim. You want to help individuals, but your aim is more towards changing a system. I mean, does that apply more to research psychology in that sense? Is that the field that links to that need to change a system, if that makes sense?
I think that the research psychologists might be better placed to speak to it. But if I think of who some of the big change agents are, I often think that research psychology is very well placed for that, just by the nature of how professions evolve. I don't want to say that clinical psychology doesn't have a space with that at all. And I think about the work that's being done in the public health sector. But yeah, to answer your question, I think there is a lot of scope for M research that isn't necessarily, it's an underestimated field. That would be my sense. You know, clinical, I think there's this sense that often it's put on a pedestal, but for broader change agents working for the World Health Organization, for making broader based change, I do think we have to also consider the importance of that field.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I will see you in the new term.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. Odelia and Asake, apologies. Can you maybe put your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer them in a written format. But for now, can we please have Lynn Richards, a clinical psychologist? I think lots of questions for the clinical psychologist. I'll try to keep my questions brief so you can ask her more questions. But I think, Lynn, thank you for joining us. And first things first, why clinical psych? Out of all of the options, why clinical psych?
And it's so interesting that you asked that, Pakiza, because a lot of you who are gearing up to go for interviews or to apply, this is a question that you will be asked. So particularly for me, I had some experience already earlier in my high school years, doing outreach work and working with individuals who had health issues and then comorbid mental health issues. And it was very clear that within a space which was more geared towards assisting people with material help, whether that be food parcels and so forth, that there was a lack of understanding about the effect of mental illness on individuals. And then I think all of us at some point in our lives engage with someone who has challenges with their mental health, and especially when it is family members. So for me, very early on, I had this desire to advocate for individuals who've had mental illnesses. And I also knew that I was able to work in a system like the government mental health system. Yeah.
Awesome. Right, I know this is a question a lot of people ask. So maybe tell us, you started telling us, what, from high school days already, this was a passion, it's some experience. But for those of us on the call who think we maybe have the experience, tell us a little bit more about the experience. What prior, so from honors, your M1 year, your internship year, how's it going?
Okay, so maybe let me start off even before that. I think when you decide psychology is the path you want to take, a lot of what you do is about, firstly, you need to think of psychology as both a vocation and a career. So it's a difference to a job. So what you do very early on, you're building up your knowledge base, your network for the future. So for those who know, there's hardly any free psychs, or there's no big psychs available. So I did a Bachelor of Social Science in Psychology and Industrial Psychology. I went on to do a Bachelor of Social Science Honors in Psychology, and that was all at UKZN. And I see the questions about people asking, like, how likely is it that you get in post-honors? And there were a lot of colleagues who did, but I wasn't one of them. And I also want to let people know that it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that that is not going to be for you at all. Reflect on whatever you receive in terms of feedback and work on it. So even though I had experience prior, what I found was I took a year off. I engaged with what I had received in terms of feedback. So I interviewed at 2 places the year I didn't get in. And then I went into doing more therapy work. So as Dr. Garulison said, I worked at Lifeline for a bit. I did open door counselling course in Durban. I became a project manager at SADC, and all of that work, so therapy work or counselling, lay counselling work, psychosocial interventions, those are all things that teach you a lot about the field, which will help you along the way. I ultimately did get into my master's at UKZN. And so for those of you who are maybe early along in the process, I know it has been explained a little bit. So you have 1 year of coursework, right? Some places have more than a year of coursework. They have 2 years. But at UKZN, where I went, it was 1 year of coursework, 1 year of internship. And I heard doctors speak about, sometimes people roll over to their internship in completing their research. In being honest, many people roll over further than that. That is definitely not something you want to aim for. You want to get your research done beforehand. But I was one of those who did not get my research done beforehand, given a variety of challenges, be it COVID, changing of topics and so forth. And, you know, my experience before, so working at SEDAC, working with the KZN Mental Health Advocacy Group, that helped me to get up in between. But at the same time, part of my advocacy work and my work in the field in terms of networking also gave me things that were necessary, like references, which a lot of people don't consider. So, you know, SAISA has been a major role player in me furthering my career in psychology. I think I joined in 2018. I must have been in about third year as a student volunteer at one of the congresses, and joining networks and making connections is a big part of progressing in this field. And so I'll think, yes, you do an internship, as I mentioned. For me, it was at a government hospital so 2 government hospitals in KwaZulu-Natal. And then after that, you hopefully have completed your research, you'll write a board exam. Okay. And a board exam is really a consolidation of your knowledge in the field. It's not something to be fearful about. And then for clinical psychologists, you go into a community service role, which is what I'm currently doing now.
I think I need to be cheeky. Lynn, the answers you're giving are so helpful, but yes, I need to do a little bit of marketing, especially for those who are third years or currently doing honors. Guys, our SAISA student division do some amazing work. So please do join SAISA and do join our student division. And like Lynn is saying, you know, with the opportunities and the networking that happens through there is really absolutely brilliant. Then last bit of marketing, our board exam workshop, we have those as well. Every January, every May, and every September before the board exam, we do offer as SAISA support for those board exams as well. But yes, Lynn, lastly, you said you currently doing your community service here. Maybe take us through a day in the life of Lynn.
Hey, so what is very interesting is that whilst you may be in a government setting, there's a lot of different work you could be doing. I'm lucky in that I am in different roles. So I am a psychologist at the department in Global, which is Pietermaritzburg. And so I get work at a clinic, which is your very primary health level. Okay, so that is your basic, a lot of my work there is containment, supportive therapy, very short interventions, a lot of assessments so what people might get confused with is clinical psychologists, we still work with kiddos, guys. So and we also sometimes dabble in the school placement area, unfortunately, because there is some challenges with the Department of Education in having enough staff. So we do assessments of kids who have intellectual disabilities, so not any learning disabilities, so intellectual disabilities, kids with ADHD and autism, and a lot of what I'm doing in our clinics. I'm also at a forensic hospital, so what is nice is if you're at a site for your internship where there is forensic work, which there are quite a few around the country. I know there's, Westcopies, England, up here in Maritzburg, Fort Napier, and you get to experience working with individuals, whether it be rape survivors, whether it be in conflict with the law. So there's things like that. And then I also work at a real hospital where there's acute inpatients, tertiary inpatients, as well as outpatient work.
That sounds hectic, and but I'm sure you're enjoying it. Right. I'm going to open the floor for one question, but I must say, the presenters so far, thank you so much. You've been responding to the questions as they've been coming up, so thank you for that. We don't really have a backlog. Any questions for Lynn? Maybe just put your hand up and we'll call you to unmute yourselves.
Pakisa, maybe I'm going to make a very biased comment. I know Lynn since she was a student and, being involved in CISA, and I think one of the strongest ambassadors of CISA. I think I saw Lynn from a student into getting selected for her honors, into her master's, now into comm service, and she's always been loyal to CISA. And I really do think it has helped her, as she's noted, because nobody does not know who Lynn Richards is, and yet she's still an emerging scholar.
Thank you, Dr. Sidat. And thank you to CISA, definitely. I see Adelia has her hand up.
Sorry, don't mind my voice. I'm a little bit sick. So I wanted to ask, for somebody, I think it's just a general question, for somebody who's been applying, so this will be my 10th year applying. I just want to know, because what I found the difficulty is every year I try and improve and I try and get myself more involved with different communities. I've done the lay counselling, I've worked with children of fire, so on and so forth. So I've got a BPsych, I did a PGCE as well. So I've got a lot underneath my belt that I have been building up over the years. And I found, I don't know, I think the question is really like, do you think that if somebody, because like, for example, one of the years that I applied, I got quite a few invites for selection. And then I think with COVID, I took like 2 or 3 years to really work on myself, get my practice established, so on and so forth. And then reapplying, I haven't been selected before, to not receiving any selections was quite disheartening, especially for somebody who's trying to network and like you're saying, like all those things that you've said, I'm like, okay, tick, tick, tick. Do you know what I'm saying? So do you have any advice for somebody? Because I feel like this might be my last year applying. It's really something that I want for myself and something that I'm very passionate about. But it's also very disheartening. I find with each year that's going past and each rejection I get, the harder it hits. So
this is quite a hard one, Adila, and not because, I think it's because there's no right answer to it, and it is extremely difficult. I do want to tell you that one of the most brilliant colleagues who I have, who studied with me, got in after her 8th year. And very often the feedback that she would get was that they are looking for a specific dynamic to a class, and that she didn't meet that for that year, and similarly to you, she had all of the things under her belt. What I would then say to that is, I know you've mentioned that you have tried, you've done the counselling in a couple of different places. Are there any things that you've done has it been long term? And maybe can you show like a progression in a specific organization where someone who's writing reference can also speak to it, where it's not just you speaking in your applications about, because referee reports really count quite highly. So that's the only thing other than what you've mentioned that I could also think about. Other than that, so I hear you saying that often years now where you're not getting invited, am I correct?
Yeah, so I even, for example, last year, I got myself a mentor, and I put myself into therapy to go through master selections as well. So I started that early last year. And like I say, so everybody that's reading my applications, they're like, I don't understand. I don't understand why you're not accepted. So then it becomes more confusing for me. Do you know what I'm saying? So
it's almost more difficult for you to accept.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I think, just building on what I said, maybe if there is somewhere that can also speak to your growth, I'd look at that. And so you said this is possibly your last year. What I would do is almost do everything that you can possibly do with all the applications that you have. So if that means reaching out to a supervisor as well and developing a topic, I know some places allow that, putting almost everything possible into these applications. So I know you said you had a mentor last year, so maybe just look at every other aspect. So referee report, research application, and also, you know what, allow yourself to feel disappointed as well, because it is disappointing and it is sad because you have invested a lot of your time and effort. But also then try to rally for that time during the applications, because our mood also affects how we then write. And maybe part of this journey of applying is something that would be useful to add in to your autobiography if there is sufficient space in your autobiography.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That was really practical. Really appreciate it. I'm sure that's echoed by a couple of hundreds on the call. But thanks, Lynn, for sharing your experience with us. Right. Moving from Lynn to another lady who's been with CISA for years and has also jumped from department to department, well, division to division. She's recently qualified as a counseling psychologist, so she's going to talk us through her experience and her exposure in the counseling psych program. Rekha? Yes, I can see you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, CISA, for giving me an opportunity for this, and thank you, Fakiza and Dr. Sidat. I'm going to share my slide. Visible?
Amazing.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a counseling psychologist, and this is my second career. So before this, I was a geologist, and however, when I first decided to pursue psychology, I was drawn by a deep curiosity about the human mind, the strong desire to help people, as most of us always have, and also navigate others' challenges of life. So I imagine myself sitting across the clients, offering insights, and that would change their lives as well. However, soon I learned that the journey of becoming a psychologist was not just about understanding others and the community around me. It was also about understanding myself. I started reading extensively, and even before starting my undergrad studies, I actually joined CISA, and hence why I think I've been here for a very, very long time. And following that, the foundations of the learning as a master's student, my academic training was both exciting and overwhelming at the same time. I remember long hours of learning theories from Freud to Rogers, applying everything, incorporating that into community psychology as well, where I can. And each lecture would depend on understanding, but nothing prepared me for the first time I sat in a room with a real client. So during my internship and supervised training, I realized that psychology was just not about applying theories, but also listening deeply and creating safe space for people who open up, as Dr. Kirsten Swami earlier spoke about it as well. So I remember my first supervised session quite clearly. I was nervous. Hands were shaking, and I tried to follow all the structured interventions that I had planned and prepared. But the client wasn't a textbook case at all. So there was a person with emotions. There was trauma, there was unpredictable responses as well. So that was the moment I learned that true therapy would require flexibility, as Lynn alluded to, and also empathy and being there fully present. So following that, as a student psychologist, now you're absorbing all the theories that you're learning. There's excitement of different approaches, and you're learning in depth, going through how you're seeing the person in the system and all that is coming. And now you're also learning to balance the rigor with personal curiosity about the human mind. You're also learning to balance the personal life as well at the same time. And as these life scenarios are unfolding, you are also trying to connect the theory with it. Now, the first exposure to trauma, anxiety, and mild to moderate mental health conditions are also addressed, because for a counseling psychologist, you will be addressing from mild to moderate mental health conditions. So initial case studies and role plays were there at the university settings, and then you would see real clients as well, and realizing that the clients do not fit in the textbook definitions at any given point in time. Very rarely, if you're lucky, but the chances are very slim. So the challenge of asking the right questions and practicing that active listening was very important. And the self-reflection and personal growth was also seen as it's happening, because in this training as a psychologist, it's advocated that you learn about the self-awareness, you start engaging in your reflections, and how my own biases, emotions, and past experiences are shaping my perspective as I'm sitting in front of the client. Now, learning the importance of boundaries and emotional regulation very early on was very important, and not forgetting the imposter syndrome and thinking, am I really ready for this? And should I have left geology at all? Those questions were coming. However, I continued to immerse myself into this individual, group, and the community work that I'd been doing. And as an intern psychologist, it helps in bridging the gap between the theory and the practice as well. So now, as a student psychologist, you still have the protection of your professors, lecturers, and everybody. However, in the intern time, what happens is it's a real-time therapeutic setting. This is what you would be exposed to. Not that you don't have support, but however, it's more realistic. So there is an overwhelming feeling of responsibility and continuing to working in such a setting. So the emotional and psychological adjustments are needed. The first experiences of feeling deeply impacted by the client's story, and learning to separate personal emotions from professional duties. So facing the doubts and fear about making mistakes, but also there are moments of fulfillment. You continue to network and build your support system. So that's something that I did for myself to pull myself through this journey of M1 internship as well. So the group of people were my mentors, my referees, my classmates. So they are the most important people, and also the colleagues in CISA. So whenever there's a check-in, you would say, this is what is happening, this is how we are working through, and this is what we may be going through. And that's how it works. And then definitely you have, I had my supervisors as well, and the continuous learning was taking place. And they are our critical support system. So because I was learning from experienced psychologists around me at this point. So the importance of self-care, debriefing, ethical reflections was quite highlighted at this point. And realizing that psychology is not just about having all the answers. Never do we have all the answers, but about facilitating that growth. And from here, there was a transition as intern to a practitioner. Definitely, there was a research aspect as well, which Lynn spoke about. So that did run over a little bit, and eventually I completed my boards. However, moving from there and into an independent practice has also been exhilarating and daunting at the same time. So now remember, they're already not supervisors, they're not professors who are there in every move of mine, but I had to trust my own judgment at this point, and there are limits of my expertise as well. However, there is a supervisor currently who supports me. So then in the private practice, there is a supervisor. Now, in my practice, I have experienced self-doubt, and there are times I've left sessions questioning whether I had said the right thing. So that still continues, and use the right technique. And some clients made progress while others seemed stuck. So I had to learn to accept that uncertainty. So the healing is not linear at all. So it is knowing that I'm merely a facilitator in the client's journey. And one of the biggest challenges was managing my own emotions as well. So during the student days, it was quite nice. So you're managing your time, you're learning everything, and you're working with everybody. But here it's also managing your emotions. So working with clients who have experienced trauma, loss, depression, and it does leave me carrying my own pain sometimes. So I've had to develop a healthy boundary, and this is something that we are also learning in M1 and internship as well. So the learnings from master that to take care of my own mental health was important, and it was essential to be. It helps you to be an effective therapist eventually. So what are the lessons that I've learned along the way? So while I help a client heal, they also teach me. So they are my teachers at the same time who are teaching me resilience. They're teaching me courage and the complexity of human nature. And not every session will ever have a breakthrough. Some days it feels like there's no progress being made at all. And it's small steps. Cultural sensitivity. So in South Africa, we know we are diverse. So adapting the Western psychological models to fit my clients and their lived experiences, that's so important. We are learning so much as we are growing in this field. We are engaging as how to help our clients who are coming from different backgrounds. And growth never stops. So the more I practice, the more I realize how much there is to learn. There's continuous training, supervision, and self-reflection to keep me evolving. And also the networking never stops as well. So the community continues to grow every day. And as we continue, I'm sorry, I'm seeing my typo now. I'm so sorry about it. The most rewarding moments, despite all the challenges, is the moment of transformation that make everything worthwhile. So I've seen clients who once felt hopeless, they rediscover their strength. I've experienced the deep fulfillment that comes from knowing the role that you played. You can't really speak about it, but however, in some way deep down, you feel good about it, even if it is small. So in your clients, in my clients' journey as well. So one of my unforgettable moment has been where a client came and told me, I feel like I've gained control over my life again. And that was when I fully understood the power of therapy. It was not to fix people, but to empower them to heal themselves. So it's like giving them all the tools, all the tips as how to go about this. And as I continue my journey in this profession, I know that my growth as a psychologist is far from over. I'm going to learn more. So in the field of mental health, it is constantly evolving. And I'm committed to learning, adapting, and finding new ways to support those who seek help. And it is just not a career for me, it's a calling. And though the journey from training to practice has been filled with challenges, self-doubt, and learning curves, I don't think so I'm going to trade it for anything. And I don't think so I'm going back to be a geologist again. So every client that I'm working with reminds me of why I've chosen this path, to walk alongside others on their healing journey. And it is a journey of growth and purpose. So in my experience as a psychologist, it has shaped not just my career, but also my understanding of human nature and resilience. It has taught me the importance of patience, self-reflection, and also the human connection. So as I move forward, I would be carrying with me the lesson, the stories, the gratitude of having been trusted with people's deepest struggles. And also, it is a privilege actually to do this work. And I think I would remain committed to making a meaningful impact, one session, one conversation, and one life at a time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rex.
Pleasure.
We have time for maybe one question. Doesn't look like there's any hands at the moment.
No problem.
I know I see somebody's asking about registered counselling. We're still going to get to that. That's a different category that we will get to. So stay with us. We're almost there. Becca, thank you so much for making time. I know you had other commitments this evening as well, so let's not keep you if there are no questions at this point. I think your RCP team will cover for you if there are questions that come through.
All right. Thank you so much. And yes, the marketing bit, please do sign up for student division, RCP division, counseling division, and all the divisions that you can. Yeah. Thank
Trauma
you.
and violence and everything else that you've been
Everything,
part of.
and DRM.
Just become a
Thank
SISA
you.
member, guys.
Yes.
Right. Thanks, Rex. Right, our next speaker is going to talk to you about the best internship ever because she happened to work at the organization I work at too. But Michelle is going to cover industrial psych for us. Over to you.
Yes, hi Keys. So I'm just gonna try and I'm just quickly gonna share my screen and then we can talk about industrial psychology. Okay. Okay, can you see my screen?
We can. Awesome.
Okay, happiness. Okay, hi guys. So just going to chat to you a little bit about industrial psychology. So what I'm going to look at today is just sort of an overview of sort of the path that I took, so where I studied, how it usually works, and then yeah, like Dr. Pakisa said, I then did my internship at JVR. So yeah, just a quick overview of these things. So just most of you will likely not know who I am. I'm not not a doctor or professor yet, but my name is Michelle. So I completed my industrial psychology degree last year, and then I also then did my board exam this year in February that I passed. So very newly registered. I'm still awaiting my number from the HPCSA, and then yeah, studying at the Northwest University up until last year then, and now I did my internship, and I'm also currently still working at JVR Africa. So firstly, I wanted to start a little bit of what is industrial psychology, because I know it's one of those things that people aren't necessarily aware of the definition, exactly what we do. So it's important to look at, I did cite that form there above. Usually each of the categories have that minimum standards for training documents. So when you look at that, you'll get a lot of information on each of the registration categories. So basically for industrial psychology, you can read there if there's anything, if you want the full official definition, but it's basically just applying psychological principles in the workplace. So anything to do with sort of being proactive in employee wellness, making sure that there are interventions that can be implemented on all three of those organizational levels. So they speak of individual, group, and organizational levels. So individual being maybe something like an individual development plan, helping individuals with career choices, helping them with wellness, with working on development areas. Then group level can be team building, so making sure that teams work effectively together. And then something like an organizational level would be an overall organizational, maybe a culture change or change management, organizational development, so anything to do with the larger organization. So anything that would be focused within a workplace setting on those 3 levels can then be classified underneath the sort of the umbrella of industrial psychology. So there are multiple careers that you can then also go into with industrial psychology. You can go into the corporate or just put my phone on mute, sorry. So you can go into the corporate or consulting space. There you can do talent management, and that has to do with any sort of succession planning, recruitment, retention strategies, anything to do with keeping your employees within the organization. Then you can do something like organizational design. That's what OD is. That's that larger company culture, engagement. Then also learning and development, so training, being an HR business partner, and that's also aligning what the company does with effective psychological practices as well, just to make sure that there's a good alignment in the company of the policies, but also keeping the people in mind. Then, like we see, employee relations, compensation and benefits, there's quite a lot you can go into. Then there's also the career side of it, maybe some career counseling, some workplace transition coaching. So coaching is also something that's quite popular within the industrial psychology space. So being able to, like we said, work on those development areas possibly with individuals and making sure they're sort of the best version of themselves. And then obviously your entrepreneurial opportunities would be going as an independent consultant and starting up your own practice. So speaking a little bit about the qualification. So when we look at the qualification, this is going to be the Northwest University specific, but that I remember when I applied and when I looked at most of the programs, a lot of them they cover similar topics. So this will likely be the case for most of them. But I am speaking under correction as I'm obviously the most familiar with the Northwest one. So with regards to the minimum requirements, that they usually check for sort of a BA or BCom honors in industrial psychology. So the honors degree would then allow you to become a registered psychometrist. So any degree that would then allow you that opportunity to then be able to write the board exam for psychometry would then allow you the opportunity to then apply for masters in industrial psychology. That's sort of how that works. And like we've seen with most of the other presentations as well, with that minimum academic average of 65%, and they're quite strict with that regard. So there's quite a few exceptions, if any, that they'll take into consideration with that percentage specifically, just obviously due to the academic demanding nature of most master's degrees. Then the modules, so I did specify there some of the modules that we'll be taking part in, but the most important of these modules will be a mini dissertation, and that will count 50% of the entire year. So all the other modules combined will only make up another 50%, which would be, if you're doing it the full time, the modules will make up 1 entire year, with your mini dissertation taking you about 1 to 3 years, depending on how quickly or how fast you're able to work, or the time that you have available as well. But it doesn't necessarily only need to be within that 1 year. The mini dissertation can, I think it is allowed up until 2 years and maybe 3 years. Then that would be sort of, they call it in the M1, obviously, so that would be your 1 year. But like we said, the mini dissertation is as long as it would take you, then it can take you then more than the 1 year. And then the second part, M2, would be then the practical aspect, which is the internship, which is 1 year. So that's what I then completed at JVR Africa. So that internship is then going to commence after the modules are completed. And this is also important that students are going to obtain their own internship placement. So this is not something that the university assists with. They will assist in sharing the advertised positions, but there's not necessarily a fixed place to which you can then apply and sort of be automatically accepted. You are going to be then required to obtain your own internship, depending on where you wish to apply and in what where in the country you wish to go, and obviously what opportunities there are available. I did put the application link here on the slides, so I'm sure we'll be able to share the slides with you at some point. If not, I did add my contact details at the end, so you can also contact me if you want more of those details. And then with the contact details of the lecturers in charge of the application process. So the Northwest University has 3 campuses, 2 of which offer this master's program. So you can either then go to the Van der Bijl Park campus, which is that Dr. Jacqueline Bosman that's on the screen, or then the Potchefstroom campus, which is Prof. Lenay Graupner. She handles the things on the Potchefstroom campus side. Then a little bit on my internship. What you then do in the internship is basically getting then practical experience in all the things that you've now gotten theoretical experience in the master's year. So you then get the opportunity to really branch out into practically applying all these things, being able to identify how you can actually implement interventions that you see, how things work in practice. So, but that's usually how it usually is with obviously with most internships, but being able to actually practically apply your knowledge. And that's something that JVO Africa specifically is very effective in. And I got so much exposure within that internship. So obviously I also highly recommend it. Then when I spoke to my to Prof. Lenay Graupner that I mentioned on the previous slide, just confirming the details with her, she also wanted me to add just this little slide on why she would want individuals to possibly choose the Northwest University, and why why she should be able to apply, and why she thinks it would be an effective your choice to complete your studies. So I asked some of my fellow students, and a lot that came out there is simply just the support system from both the lecturers and fellow students, and also the freedom to choose your own research topic. A lot of universities might not always give you the opportunity to take ownership and to take control of in which direction you do your research, but there is that opportunity there. And then from Prof. Lenay Graupner's side, there's a lot of practical exposure that we're given at the Northwest University with regards to the counselling aspect, because usually within the industrial psychology space, sometimes the counselling, because we are allowed to do short-term counselling, especially workplace counselling, workplace trauma interventions, and that sometimes gets lost within the other, because like we can see, it's a very, very broad field, and it sometimes gets lost. And being able to actually have that experience working as a short-term trauma counselor, being able to build up that experience, since we are still mental health practitioners. And then being able to get that global perspective from multiple other universities across various countries over the world. So being able to get a broader perspective of simply what's happening within the university, or simply even within a South African context, but actually seeing what's happening outside. So that is all from my side. I put my contact details there if anyone wants to specifically ask me something, or wants to get more information about what I chatted to today. But that is, I think, all from my side. So you can have some questions maybe.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Northwest must get you to do marketing for them.
I thought so as well. When I spoke to Prof. Lenay, I was like, no, I just want some information on that master's program, just to make sure that I can then put it there if people wish to apply, then they know the due dates and everything. She's like, oh, but we need to add all the benefits, and she's so excited for this. So she asked me to just make sure that I can share some of those benefits of that program specifically. And it goes without saying that JVR would be my internship place of choice. So so it was really an amazing opportunity.
Brownie points. You done your internship, but yes, we'll let the team know. Thanks, Michelle. Any questions from anyone regarding the IOP program or about Michelle's internship? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. This isn't anything in the chat.
No, not at this point. But Michelle, thank you so much. And to our participants this evening, thank you. I know it's a lot of information that we're needing to cover, but we're almost there. We have two categories left. We're going to do registered counselling now. So Genevieve Barrow, She's been a registered counsellor for some years. She's also our chairperson of our registered counsellors and psychometry division at SAISA. So you're really getting to speak to someone who represents registered counselling at quite a, a degree. Yes, okay, Jen, there we go.
Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to share my screen. If you can let me know if you can see it.
Amazing. Yes,
can you see it maximized?
No, yes, there we go.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Rajab. As she said, my name is Genevieve Burrow. I am a registered counsellor and I am the chairperson of the Division of Registered Counsellors and Psychometrists for SAISA. And this evening I am going to be speaking to you about the pathways to becoming a registered counsellor. I'm going to give you an overview of the Bachelor of Psychology and Bachelor of Psychology equivalent program, that both are designed to provide practical and theoretical foundation for psychological practice. And it's an alternative route to, or potentially an alternative route to obtaining a professional registration with the HPCSA, but you have to have a passion for counseling. A lot of people that don't get into clinical psychology after a few tries, or they don't get into counseling psychology, apply for registered counseling. I can assure you it is, excuse me, it is an intense degree. So make sure when you apply that counseling is something that is very much in your heart. Right, so there are two different degrees to become a registered counselor. They are very similar in many ways. The one is called the Bachelor of Psychology. I'm going to refer to it as the B-Psych. And the other is called the Bachelor of Psychology equivalent, which I'm going to refer to as the B-Psych equiv. The Bachelor of Psychology degree is a dedicated, accredited 4-year professional degree. So what that means is you will study that degree. You'll go straight from first, second, third into 4th year, which is your honors year. And it leads to a registration as a registered counselor with the HPCSA. It emphasizes a lot of psychological theory, a lot of practical experience and supervised training. It focuses very much on applied psychology with real world skills. So how are we in practice as registered counselors going to counsel and conceptualize our clients' cases? Both degrees include a 720-hour practicum for hands-on experience, for practical experience. So think sort of internship. Those 720 hours are broken down. So, for example, you would need a certain number of hours for one-on-one counseling at your practicum placement site. You'll need group hours. You'll need to provide a community intervention project, and you'll do a mini thesis. And it is intense, but it is absolutely worth it. Once you have completed your degree and you have completed your 720 hours in a satisfactory manner, you will meet the HPCSA registration requirements. So you will apply to the HPCSA to write the board exam, and hopefully then you will pass the board exam. One of the benefits of the B-Psych and the equiv degree is that they are very small classes. So there's a lot of individualized attention and individualized support. So that is a benefit, a major benefit. In terms of admission requirements to the B-Psych and the equiv, you need a national senior certificate or a bachelor's pass, a minimum admission point score of 21, maths or maths literacy. They do accept maths literacy, and you have to be proficient in English because you are going to be writing dozens of essays. You'll need referee reports. Lynn Richards, when she was speaking about clinical psychology, spoke about the necessity for referee reports. You'll need 2 of those. And if you are invited to the selection week, it's an interview process and other activities such as role playing and writing essays, and that's for your selection week. In terms of the learning outputs, you'll learn how to conduct psychological assessment and screening, which is critical. Please bear in mind that we may not diagnose, but we do need to understand DSM-5 and the revised version now to be able to assess and screen on a basic level to see if a client has a potential psychological condition. You'll also learn counseling techniques and interventions. So this will be one-on-one counseling, groups, and psychometric assessments. Your psychometric assessments will also be included in those 720 hours. You will learn so much ethics that it is going to be coming out of your ears, and that is for a very good reason, because when you get into when you become a student registered counselor and a registered counselor, you need to know ethics backwards and forwards, and professional conduct, of course, research methodologies, which is always helpful, and your degree will include a mini thesis. And what I added here is community psychology and mental health interventions. The BPsych and Equiv degrees are really focused on community counseling, specifically in the NPO space. There are various accredited institutions in South Africa. They are the South African College of Applied Psychology, or SACAP. SACAP is a national college. They have campuses in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Durban. The University of Johannesburg, the Cornerstone Institute, which is in Cape Town only, and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. UKZN referred to their registered counselling degree as a PG-DIP, so a postgrad diploma. And in terms of the program structure, you will study an intense amount of theoretical coursework. So this might be to give you some ideas of the modules, for example, psychopathology, multiculturalism. You will learn your research modules, psychometrics, and you'll have 720 hours supervised practicum as a student registered counselor. I myself am a psych facilitator, and so I have 6 students at my site at the moment, and those 720 hours, if you work hard, you will achieve them. And then research methodology and professional ethics. Again, professional ethics is absolutely critical. You have to meet the HPCSA's basic requirements to be able to register. So what is that? You will finish your BPsych or your Equiv degree. As I said earlier, you'll reach the end of your practicum and the end of your honors degree at a satisfactory level, and then you will go on to register or to apply to the HPCSA to register for the board exam. You'll then write the board exam and become a registered counselor. The board exams are typically held in March, June, and October. So there's 3 board exam series a year. And just a quick plug for CISA. We at the Division of Registered Counselling and Psychometry, we host pre-board exam workshops 3 times a year, a couple of weeks prior to the board exam. So your entry requirements for the BPsych and the program outputs. So you will have an honors degree in psychology or an equivalent qualification. So remember I said that HPCSA entry requirements, your BPsych or your BPsych Equiv completed. It has to be accredited by your institution. You will have to have completed your practical training and your supervised training. And then you will go on to the successful completion of the HPCSA board exam. once you've completed your board exam, you have to apply for registration with the HPCSA. So don't assume that because you've passed your board exam, you're now registered. You're now registered. You now need to register as a registered counselor, pass the required professional board exam, and you have to adhere to CPD points annually. So that's continued professional development, and that is in order to maintain your HPCSA practice number. Working as a graduate, you will work, of course, as a registered counselor. You can work for NGOs and NPOs, private practice, schools, or corporate settings. So there's a wide variety of job opportunities that you as a registered counselor can apply for. And it can also serve as a stepping stone to study your master's degree, whether you want to study CLIN or counseling, whatever the case might be. As I said earlier, a lot of people, not a lot, but a great deal of people study the B-Psych or the Equiv because they didn't get into masters. So you can use your experience and your training to apply for your master's degree. So what is the B-Psych Equiv program? Remember I said that the B-Psych program is a structured 4-year degree. This degree, B-Psych Equiv, you would have already completed your undergraduate degree elsewhere. So in my case, I did my undergrad degree at UNISA. So I didn't do the B-Psych, I did the Equiv. So you will study your undergrad, and then you'll apply for the B-Psych equivalent, which is the honors degree, Bachelor of Social Sciences in Honors. And it, again, integrates academic coursework with supervised practical training. So again, the 720 hours apply to you as well. It is aimed at preparing students for a registration as a registered counselor. And then why choose the B-Psych equivalent? Well, hands-on experience in psychology and counseling and psychology-related fields. It's excellent for people with a passion for community-based psychology. To reiterate what I said earlier, the B-Psych and the Equiv are primarily rooted in community psychology. So if that is where your heart is at, the B-Psych or the Equiv is for you. It's ideal for students who are interested in practical psychological work. So practical being you now want to become a counselor. You can become a counselor in private practice. You can conduct psychometric assessments, etc. It leads directly to a registration with the HPCSA once you have passed your board exam. And it's a shorter duration compared to a full master's degree. So B-Psych equivalent provides a fast track route into more professional psychology, combines academic rigor with practical experience. So that was when I was speaking to you about your coursework, your academic coursework, and your practicum. It's ideal for people who are looking to make an immediate impact in the field. And research is accredited institutions and programs, structures for applying. What are the career opportunities? They are exactly the same as the B-Psych degree. Community mental health services, schools and education settings. That even includes, I'm based in Cape Town, the Western Cape Education Department, NGOs and NPOs for social development organizations. So the Department of Social Development, for example. You can also become involved in employee wellness programs. And I know a lot of registered counselors who are in private practice, and in addition to that, they will offer employee wellness programs. And then, of course, private practice. When you begin your private practice, you would need to do so under supervision. So that would be under the supervision of another registered counselor who's been in the field for a minimum of 3 years. It can be a counseling psych, a clin psych, but you have to have supervision. Okay, so some tips. this is my personal experience, volunteering. In your application process, it is so beneficial for the panel to see that you have the passion to volunteer, to give up your time in a volunteering capacity with no remuneration. Network, network, network. Meet as many people as you can. It's imperative to get your name out there. Join CISA because that is how you are going to network, network, network. I joined CISA in my first year and it absolutely changed my life, 100%. Become involved in community settings. So whether you want to go to an under-resourced community hall to give a talk on mental health, or whether you would like to go to a school to implement a program there, just ensure that you have positioned yourself in a community environment. And this is incredibly important. Ensure that you know the scope of practice of the registered counsellor, which is Form 258. You literally Google HPCSA Form 258 and download it. And that would be for your electronic application and for selection week. They want to know that you know what you will be doing, what you won't be doing. For example, you will not be doing any diagnosing of clients. You will not be doing any projective psychometric assessments. And yeah, they want to know that you have a very firm grasp on what registered counseling entails. So please write this down. I would say the last three are incredibly important. Joining CISA, you're already going to network. Try and get involved in community settings. If there is already an organization in your community, join them, help them, assist there, and then your scope of practice. In terms of a personal reflection, it is not an easy degree. There is a misnomer that the B-Psych or the B-Psych equiv is super easy because it's not masters. It is not an easy degree. It's intense. It's an intense amount of work, but it is absolutely worth it if that is where your heart is. In terms of employment, I was hired immediately by my practicum placement site. So one day after I'd finished my practicum, I received a phone call and they hired me. So you do have multiple employment opportunities. Attend counseling or therapy frequently. There might be issues in your academic coursework that trigger you, or in practicum that trigger you, or it's just to ensure that you don't reach burnout or compassion fatigue and that you have a very good grasp on your own self-care. Ensure that you have a supervisor. So this is critically important. I have an external supervisor myself, even though I'm a registered counsellor and I work with students, I train students, I myself have my own supervisor, and that is critical for debriefing and for advice as well. You'll be surprised how much you learn about yourself. I went into my degree thinking I know myself so incredibly well. And then I left my degree thinking, okay, yeah, maybe not so much. But you'll learn a lot about yourself and a lot, obviously, about your clients. And passion is everything. I love working for an NPO. I love training students. I love seeing clients, and I really enjoy my management duties. So if you are going to go into this degree, remembering that the pass mark for all of your assignments is 50%. And if you fail, you fail. That's it. You just fail. There's no chance to rewrite the exam or to rewrite the assignment. So ensure that you've done your research, you've done your homework, and this is absolutely what you want to do because you are going to be spending an enormous amount of time on it. 100% worth it. I wouldn't change it for anything. So there we go. That is my input on registered counseling and the B-Psych and the equiv. So are there any questions? Okay, so I see there was a question here. I'm just scrolling down.
And just from my side, as the questions for the B-Psych has been popping up, Zakia has been on it and responding. So thanks for that, Zak.
Okay, perfect.
Julia, I see your hand is up.
Hi, yes. I was just wondering what advice you give to people who are maybe not in a financial situation to be able to volunteer, because it's come up quite a few times through everyone's discussions, and I understand how important it is to get, that experience in the community, but to be able to volunteer when you work full-time, more than one job, can be quite difficult when you need to make ends meet. So do you have any recommendations on places that you could maybe work for that pay, or any recommendations on what to do to get that experience otherwise?
Julia, that is a brilliant question, and thank you so much for raising it, because a lot of us, it's an expensive degree. It's a very expensive degree. I think it's more expensive than masters. And so how about this for an idea? You could create pamphlets when you're at home, you're maybe sitting in front of the TV. You can create pamphlets on Canva on mental health. This is what major depressive disorder is. This is what generalized anxiety disorder is, or how to work with PTSD, or the negative effects of social media on the adolescent brain, for example, and go and drop them off at schools and community centers, because that is volunteering. You're still giving up your time in an unpaid manner, and you're reaching out to places, and you can deliver them there. So you need to think outside of the box in terms of volunteering. And that's one idea that I can think of. But what I would say, Julia, in terms of your application, right? So let's say you make selection week. Do a few things that you can manage. I mean, you can join the local ladies knitting club at a care home, for example. That's also considered volunteering, and you can chat to them and think outside of the box. When we think about volunteering, we often think volunteering at a specific organization that's maybe got a 24-hour helpline or SADAG lifeline, whatever it might be. So just use some creativity there. But I would also, in my application process, I was very, very honest with them. And I would say do the same, and be very direct with it, and explain to them that you work more than one job, and volunteering isn't something that you have been able to achieve yet, because they will understand that. If it's just not volunteering for the sake of not really feeling like it, that is different, but you have got valid financial reasons to explain that to them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think I tend to think of volunteering as a very particular organization side of things, where you're going to have someone sort of supervising you or signing off on it. But those are really good ideas. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Jane. Right. I apologize in advance that I'm not going to be able to do psychometry justice in 3 minutes, but hopefully you can all spare me 5 minutes extra. But thanks, Jen, for that. I did see in the chat, so at this point we have covered all registration categories except neuropsychology. Unfortunately, our representative from the University of Cape Town couldn't join us. However, please, if you are interested in neuropsych, go onto UCT's website. There is a lot of information about the course there. Yes, unfortunately, if you are interested in neuropsych, at this point, UCT is the only university that is accredited with the HPCSA. But without, let's try to finish as soon as possible. But still doing psychometry justice, then let's close off this evening with an introduction to psychometry. So I have been in the field for some time, and I teach psychometry guest lecture at a few universities. And last month, without knowing yet that we were doing this course, I actually asked my new psychometrists, why did you choose this profession? Because often we hear that, you know what, I didn't get into masters my first time immediately after honors, or I'm looking for earning opportunities or whatever the case. So when I got my class in, the first thing before we even got into the basics of psychometrics, which is the lecture that I teach, I asked them on Mentimeter, why are we here today? And I think throughout the evening, you've been hearing that from all of our presenters, and I've been seeing it in the comments in the chat as well. All of us are here because we want to help people. We have this love for psychology. We see it as our purpose. Sometimes it might even be that you're in your third year or even at honors and you're not quite sure what it is you want to specialize in, what you want to become a master in. And something like the registered counselor, I think Genevieve did a brilliant job of really breaking down what it is that they do. But for me personally, I found that psychometry, yes, on the one hand, the focus is on assessment administration, but it gave me so much exposure to clinical assessments, even though I couldn't use them like to diagnose, educational assessments, counseling assessments, how assessments work, which then ended off becoming a full-time passion and me going into research psychology. But I think if any of these resonate with you, you know, passion to just grow, maybe it is just a gap year. A lot of people sit there in those psychometry classes as that gap year to help find themselves. What is it that they want to specialize in going forward? You know, maybe psychometry is for you. Maybe while you're with us for those 6 months, you'll find that just doing the psychometrics itself, that's where your purpose is. That's where the passion lies. So there we go. From fellow students, why do they choose psychometrics? So what is it that a psychometrist does? Very similar to your registered counselors, post-honors, this is an option that you can go into if you don't get into masters, or maybe you want to take a break from masters. What we as psychometrists do is we use psychological assessments, and we also help make it more accessible and to promote psychological well-being in the South African population. I think just very quickly, historically, we've had so many assessments being imported into South Africa. Assessments in the past were used to discriminate against our previously disadvantaged communities. And right now, I think it's an amazing space to be in the psychometric space. There's so much more that we're wanting to do from an African psychology perspective, a decolonization perspective, in really making assessments accessible and beneficial to our South African population. I've very, very quickly summarized our Form 94. So Genevieve was talking about Form 258 for your registered counselors. That would kind of be your scope of practice and the minimum requirements to practice as a registered counselor. For psychometry, Form 94 is kind of your guide. You can look at it almost as a syllabus. When you do go apply to the universities to do psychometry, sometimes there is that entrance exam where they will ask you about Form 94, what is within your scope as a psychometrist. Very similar, like registered counselors, we don't do diagnostic assessments from like a psychopathology perspective. But what we do is test administration, scoring, interpretation, report writing, and feedback. We also help with the development and adaptation of psychological tests and procedures. The only things we don't work with is projective testing and psychopathology. That is more in the master's and PhD space. Like other registration categories, we do also assist with policy development, especially in respect of psychological assessment. I think there's been many questions in the chat about, what's the job title of whatever registration we're talking about. And if we're looking at psychometry in specific, often if you're looking for like a talent acquisition specialist or a HR manager or learning and development support, often the psychometry degree will put you in good stead for those positions. Often we have psychometrists. I mean, I work with psychometrists in the banking industry, in the mining industry, across the space, where we work with them together with their legislative guidelines, but also how psychometrics can be used to support them in doing what they need to do, and so that we don't get in mess with CCMA. Together with things like contingency management, how to run your own practice, how to refer to your masters individuals, and so forth. Right. To get into psychometry, you would need a minimum of honors. I think, like you've heard across the board, 65% tends to be your minimum bracket. Given the number of applications that come through, it's probably closer to 70. But that being said, they look at so much. They look at your experience. They look at your marks. They look at your interest in the field. I know at UJ, back when I went through the psychometry program, it was a phased approach. So you first go in, you have an entrance exam where you only asked about Form 94. You then go back in and you do assessments, a personality assessment, a cognitive assessment. Sometimes they add in a values assessment, and then you go for an interview. So it's quite phased in how they select. Compared to your master's programs, where it is, I'm not saying psychometry isn't competitive, but compared to the 5 to 8 that normally come in into your master's courses, a lot of your psychometry courses can take between 30 to 60. I think in the years that I've been teaching psychometry, which isn't that long, the classes have been increasing by almost 10 every year. So UJ, for example, is currently sitting at approximately 60 students that they take in. The demand for psychometrists is also growing. UNISA is recently, their program has been accredited, so there's now an additional provider. And depending on the university you then go to, you might have to find your own internship, or sometimes a lot of the internship providers. So for example, like Michelle was mentioning earlier, JVR Psychometrics, we've partnered with UJ, for example, and so we don't speak with students directly. The university kind of just sends their students to us, and they do their 6-month internship with us. So in addition to having a pretty good honors mark, you need to be passionate about psychological assessment. So if there's normally an honors module that you do, basic psychometrics or psychological assessment, or how to do assessments in psychology. Those marks are quite important. I feel as a person, to enjoy psychometry, it's quite a balance between the assessment, that rigor, that routine that you enjoy, being comfortable with stats. And I think often I have people, when we're sitting in those psychometry classes, the thing we're most nervous about is the stats. But you do need to at least be comfortable with some of the graphs and know how to convert things like from a percentile to a steinheim. But we teach you that. And then interpersonal skills. So there is that element of stats, which is very data orientated, but then equally so the interpersonal skills and wanting to help our clients. Very rarely do psychometrists go into like long-term therapy. We most of the time tend to have an intake session. We administer the assessments and then go into feedback, and then we kind of leave the individual unless we're doing a short-term coaching course with them. So where to apply? These are the universities currently that are registered with the HPCSA to offer psychometry. I have all of their details there. Please also go onto the website. I think throughout this evening, we had wonderful universities, Stellenbosch, University of Western Cape. We had representation from UKZN, WITS. But if you heard nothing today, or maybe your network broke at a point, go onto the website, and for the most part, the universities do really try to support you as well in your application. But for psychometry, these are the 4 that you can contact. Stellenbosch, the applications are closing quite soon. So normally, none of the others have actually posted the July 2025 intake yet. But Stellenbosch is coming quite soon. So do just take note of that. I do see there's quite a few questions in the chat that I will get to shortly. But before, because I know we're running out of time, if this evening was beneficial to you, please join us on the 8th of May, where we go into part 2 of this. So tonight, really, our focus was hopefully awakening the interest again, the passion, sharing how to get onto the path. And then part 2 on the 8th of May, we'll be going beyond the traditional route. So we have some amazing practitioners who are either, they passed the research psych board exam, or they passed the clinical psych board exam, and then life took them a different way. So especially for those individuals who are asking, well, what's the jobs that I can go into after getting the master's degree, after getting the psychometry degree, after getting the RC degree? Please join us on the 8th of May, because that session really will be a lot of case studies and practical, how individuals used their degrees in alternative industries. Right, with that, let me try to find the chat. If there is anyone who has a question that they would like to unmute themselves, feel free to do that.
Hi, Keys. Can I ask you to address a question by Jade, which speaks to whether psychometrists can do a test for a child that has autism to see if they do have it or any other learning disorder?
Yes, so you would be able to administer the assessment, but as a psychometrist, you cannot diagnose. So typically in those cases, you would partner together with an educational psychologist or a counseling psych, most likely. You would be able to administer, but you yourself would not be doing the diagnosis, if that helps. Thanks, Zakia, for partnering.
Dr. Rajab, there was a communication sent out by the Health Professional Council of South Africa to say that they weren't going to register registered psychometrists any longer, only registered counselors. So
Yes.
I'm not quite clear whether this has been rigorously opposed by people, interested parties or not, but I think it's absolutely insane. It's just part of the madness that's our psychological board. But honestly, I think it's a very worthwhile profession and addition to other psychological sort of fields.
Thanks so much for that.
It really concerned me.
Yes, I'm actually not sure where that came from. Last year conference season, it was between September, October last year. I also heard the rumor that psychometry was being it was no longer a profession, that people could register. I think there was some miscommunication in that there was a category psychometrician, and there was also a category supervised psychometry. And those exams have now fallen away. As the psychometry program is not going anywhere. As you can see, more universities are actually offering the psychometry program. It's not going. And post you completing your 6-month internship, then you will be allowed to write your independent practice psychometry paper. So I think there was a little bit of miscommunication or misunderstanding from what the HPCSA had sent previously. Psychometry is definitely not leaving us anytime soon. It's just the supervised psychometry registration that is falling away. Hope that helps. Okay. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I think there were also quite a few questions about recording. Absolutely, Office will be making the recording from this evening available to everybody who has registered. So you will hear from us soon. Thank you, everyone, for giving us that additional 15 minutes as well on top of a super busy day. And hope to see you again on the 8th of May.
I just want to say thank you to you, Pakisa, for facilitating this evening, to all our presenters for insightful presentations, and most importantly, to all our participants for joining us this evening. And we hope to be offering much more to you over the next few months. Watch our website and our social media platforms, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Sidat and Dr. Rajab.
Hello.